So your high school locker room looks like it was last updated when mullets were cool the first time around? Well, fear not, because we're about to fix that sad excuse for a locker room with some serious wood. Wait, that didn't sound right. But you get the gist of it. As Bowling for Soup once said, nothing changes but the faces, the names, and the trends. High school never ends.
Logan might not have been the best student, but me, on the other hand, is a different story. I never forget my book, never sleep, and always get good grades. Okay, that might be a little exaggerated. I'm no captain of the chess team, the clown, or even the quarterback, but I am a pretty dang good woodworker.
Did he really just say that I wasn't the best student? Back in high school, I had a little bit of an advantage over most. I had a twin sister, and did you know, having such, when it came to pop quizzes, having someone with the exact same brain sitting right next to you was a little like a cheat code. It almost felt like bending the rules, but man did it save me a lot in the long run. Now, working with pre-finished plywood and woodworking feels a bit like those high school days all over again. It's like the cheat sheet of the woodworking world, or in my case, having my twin sit right next to me. Using pre-finished plywood is like finding the answers ahead of time. It's smooth, sanded, can be stained, and is sealed, cutting out hours of work and giving us the perfectly right finish off the bat. It's a smart choice, but let's be honest, it does feel a bit like cutting corners, just like those high school days.
Speaking of smart choices, right here was not one of them. Me and Logan should have previously cut them down while they were full sheets, but instead decided to rip everything, forcing us to improvise and make a jig to cut everything down into height. And quoting a future friend of ours, some of the best woodworkers aren't good at woodworking at all. Rather, they are the best jig makers. Thanks, Cam.
Just like in high school, the basics never change. Remember that time in shop class when we learned about the importance of precision? Well, it's the same here. To make sure these lockers stand the test of time, we're dadoing the back panels. And this is where it all comes together, the backbone of the entire system. A good dado joint is like our friendship, Tanner. Sturdy, reliable, and built to last.
Aw, I can tell you mean that one, bud. Now back to cutting dados. Here's a trick when you're cutting them. You want to make sure you're running at a steady pace, no rushing. It's just like high school. If you try to breeze through it, you're going to miss all the important details. I mean, we all have that one friend that just rushed through the paper only to realize they forgot half the questions. That sums up a lesson that went outside the classroom for me. Patience. It's something people lack or something people learn. Myself, I was a learner of it, which shows off how I could wait the time to build a table saw sled to cut the dados on the inner parts of the plywood.
Table saw sled? Guess somebody wasn't patient enough to learn the name of the jig. Now, I wasn't so sure that this crosscut sled would qualify as a jig, so I looked up the Webster Dictionary version of such, defining that a device that holds a piece of work and guides the tools operating it are such a jig. So yeah, thanks, Cam.
Now it's time for assembly. This is where all those years of group projects finally pay off. Except this time, you don't have to carry the whole team. We're using wood glue and brad nails to hold these bad boys together, making it nice and solid. You know, the opposite of Logan's GPA back in the day.
Sure, my GPA wasn't top of the class, but at least I was smart enough to know what really matters. Being crowned homecoming king and shutting down strikers as an all-conference goalie. But hey, I guess we all have our strengths. No comment. I like that. Now back to you, Tanner.
Oh, I've got a comment. It's just not for you. It's for the wonderful shelves that made these lockers look like lockers. Now we just gotta pray that these don't turn into a catch-all for gym clothes, homework, lunch, or any other regret kids can throw at them. But hey, it's still gonna be more useful than you in a group project.
But for real, on a more serious note, let's talk about the MVP of this build, our Epilogue laser engraver. If in your budget, I truly believe every woodworking business can greatly benefit from having one in their arsenal. The versatility they provide is literally next to none, ranging from things like creating jigs to being able to fully customize these lockers for our high school.
With that, we are on to the finishing touches of this build, milling and installing of the face frames. This process is no different than what you'll see in any other video, but just in case you're new to the process, it typically starts at your joiner.
Except, of course, those instances where you'll need smaller components for your project. During those times, we always recommend cutting the pieces down to rough size at your miter saw, and then face joining them. Think of it like this. The shorter the board, the easier and faster you'll be able to joint them. However, in our case, we needed 6-foot end pieces, so longer boards it was.
Though not shown, we did use our Powermatic planer during the milling process to get fully squared pieces. You might ask then, what's the point of a joiner if you have a large-scale planer? It's simple. A joiner makes a flat square face. A planer then makes the opposing side parallel. Without a joiner, a planer will merely create a slightly thinner yet still warped board.
You can't have one without the other. It's like us, Tanner. Now once fully milled, all pieces were rip cut on our table saw to the appropriate sizing. And as shown, here's the process we use to secure the face frames to their independent lockers. Simple, some glue and some brad nails again. Yet once fully dried, quite effective.
We then fastened the lockers into groups of 2. This allowed us to fit within the hallways provided and take fewer trips up and down the stairs, inevitably saving our backs a little. Grouping them also allowed us to finish half the lockers while in the shop rather than on site.
These things are really starting to look like lockers, but like all good lockers, they need some form of a door. Remember this footage from earlier? Well, when prepping all of our plywood earlier, we actually simultaneously cut all of our shelving and doors at the same time. And remember earlier when we were using our table saw, we were simultaneously cutting all of our edge banding for these doors.
As you can see, once the edge banding was installed, we added a 45-degree chamfer to the inner part of the door, while an 1/8 inch roundover to the outside, creating the perfect door. Now, adding the chamfer was not part of the original plan, but our edge banding did not span the entire thickness of the door originally. This minor inconvenience led to my brilliant idea to add one, not only for style, but to also allow the door to close easier with less friction.
Onto handles and hardware, and once again we're using a jig to make our life and the job at hand easier. And that's just what they do. If you truly sit down and think about it, jigs are a lot like the procrastinated studying done just before a big test. You study to build the knowledge needed to pass the test, and similar to such, jigs are designed to ensure precision, accuracy, and repeatability in a task. They make the operation easier and more efficient, much like studying for that big test. See the similarity now?
Before installing the doors, we had to buff out any scratch and finish the raw wood of the edge banding. We decided on using Johnson's pacing wax. What scuffed the doors? Well, anything from our router to the table saw, and even ourselves with some good old human error. Nothing to worry about though, as this finish restored our doors back to their former beauty. This finish is similar to getting out of the second semester exams. It's easy if you try, and makes your life, and end of the year, so much better.
Speaking of endings, Tanner, I think we're nearing the end of this build. We're finally installing these doors, adding some soft close hinges and magnetized door stops. Add a coat hanger to each locker, and this build is ready for install.
Home stretch here, folks. Welcome to Carlisle High School, our tribe, and our home away from home for 4 years of our lives.
Install had our backs hurting a little. Luckily, there were only 3 sets of stairs. It's like this school was designed to hate contractors. Okay, that's a tad untrue. 1 flight got us into the school, while the other 2 were into the locker room.
No more hiccups while we brought them in, except for the old lockers still being in there. Now what you would think would be a somewhat quick install had us questioning our abilities. None of our masonry drill bits worked to get through the concrete, but you'll have that on the bigger jobs. Credit to the builders back in the 50s though. And after a few bad words and new bits, install was going a lot smoother.
Once drilled, we used Tapcon masonry screws to fasten the lockers to the walls. Once on, we glued and screwed the 2 units together. This was a 2-day install since we had to wait for the glue to dry, hence the change from a green shirt to a red shirt.
We started off day 2 with some good old sanding. Sadly, we forgot to get footage of us finishing the face frames, but it was the same process as the doors, so just imagine it.
The install and video are coming to an end. We would like to thank the ones that stayed with us this long, so if you have any questions or critiques, start your comment with Tribe, and we will try to get to all of those first. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and remember, high school never ends.